Welcome to the Sharon Partners quarterly market update for the March quarter 2023. I'm Kim, one of the advisors here, and I'm joined as always by Steve, our external investment committee member. Steve, thanks for joining us today. It's been a bit of a wild ride this last quarter. Of course, all the talk has been around the international banking crisis. How has that played out and how has it impacted the Australian market?
Yeah, it's a great question, Kim, and you wouldn't think that a banking crisis should affect Australian banks because we do have the safest banks on the planet, but in fact it has. Let me just show you what's been going on in the quarter in the ASX. It was actually took off to a great start. January was the best January on record for the ASX 200. It was up by 6.2%. And then you can see we had rate rises on February the 7th and March the 7th, and the market sort of tracked a little bit sideways trying to work out how many more interest rate rises will there be. But then it all went to pot on the 11th and 12th of March when this bank called the Silicon Valley Bank collapsed. And instantly around the world, markets had what they call contagion fear, and the banking sector fell across markets. And you can see that really strongly in the Australian market.
And what about the international market, Steve?
So much the same story. When you look at this chart, Kim, you can see that over the last 12 months, actually the Australian market and the international market have been doing much the same thing. And then when Silicon Valley Bank collapsed, you can see this dislocation. So by the end of the quarter, international markets are up by 9.4%, but Australian markets only up by 3.5%.
And why would that be, Steve?
So it has got to do with the banks, and this is sort of difficult to understand. There was a much bigger fall in banks in Europe and America than there were in the Australian banking sector, but banks make up such a big part of the Australian market. The fact that they were negative for the quarter, the fact that the financial sector was negative for the quarter has really dragged down the Australian market, where banks make up only about 10 or 11% of the world market. So even though banks are down, it doesn't bring the whole market down.
And Steve, it's always important that we look at our fixed interest markets. What's happened there?
Yeah, well, as you know, Kim, it was a difficult time in the fixed interest world last year. And to be honest, this quarter was not looking much better to start with. I mentioned a couple of rate rises were there. Yields were going up, hence the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank. But once Silicon Valley Bank collapsed, then yields fell dramatically. In fact, almost the most since the GFC first happened. And the reason for that, suddenly the market started pricing in a recession, particularly in the US. And at the thought of a recession, there's a flight to quality. And so government bonds are still seen as the safest assets around. And so yields fell, bond prices went up. So Kim, what it means, for the quarter, we've actually got positive returns for both Australian bonds and global bonds. So a bit of a welcome relief from last year.
Well, it's certainly been a bit of a whirlwind this quarter, and as always, quite a good reminder of the importance of maintaining a well-diversified portfolio. We're just never sure what the market's going to bring us next, but we're always grateful for your insight. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Kim.